Alex Rock Jefferson was looking forward to the weekend as he made his way home that day. With Thursday being Labor Day, he and Grace, his wife of 5 years, had been invited to spend a long weekend at the mountain property of her boss, Michael Ward, a senior partner at Evergreen Legal Group where Grace worked as a paralegal. Rock had already taken Thursday off and decided to use a vacation day for Wednesday as well. His father, who also served as his boss, kindly let him leave work early on Tuesday so they could pack and head out. The trip to Richard's estate was expected to take around 3 hours, factoring in freeway congestion and the twisty, narrow roads leading up to the place. He had high hopes for the weekend. Things had been tense with Grace over the last few months. She had become somewhat distant, snapping at him for no apparent reason. Physical affection was minimal. What had been a passionate several-night-a-week routine had dropped to maybe a reluctant once a month, if that. Being the concerned, loving husband, Rock reached out to Grace, hoping to help her through whatever was troubling her, but she would simply shrug him off, telling him she would handle it herself. Worse yet, Grace constantly rebuffed his attempts to initiate affection and now frequently pulled away when he tried to hold her or offer comfort. The situation was becoming increasingly unbearable for him, and he wondered if she was seeing someone else. Then she told him they had been invited to her boss' mountain estate for the weekend to celebrate her promotion. Promotion? Rock asked, puzzled. You never mentioned anything about a promotion. How long has this been in the works? A couple of months now, Grace said. I'm sorry I didn't tell you earlier. Is that why you've been so distant lately? I guess so. I'm sorry, sweetheart. I didn't mean to take it out on you. I've had a lot on my mind lately, she replied apologetically. Rock smiled as he wrapped her in his arms and felt a pang of sadness when she flinched slightly. I can understand, he said, and to think I was worried that you might be seeing someone else. He felt her tense up slightly, but then she relaxed. Of course not, Grace said. I would never do something like that to you. He heard the words, but something in her tone didn't sound convincing. I'm glad to hear that. Rock forced himself to respond despite his growing uneasiness, because you know that's something I simply wouldn't tolerate. I know, Grace said quietly. So, do you think you can take off Wednesday? 3 days in the mountains would do us both a lot of good. Sure, I have plenty of vacation time. We can leave Tuesday after I get off work if you want. That would be wonderful. They'll let Richard know and have everything packed by the time you get home, she said. I promise it will be a weekend you'll never forget. Rock thought about those words as he filled the gas tank on his new Ford F-150. A weekend he would never forget. He could only hope she meant that in a good way, but a part of him had mixed feelings, especially after the rather serious discussion he had with his father and uncle earlier. He pulled into the driveway, cut the engine, and headed into the house. True to her word, Grace had everything packed and ready to be loaded into the truck. He checked his bags, verifying that his items were packed and ready to go. He was impressed that Grace had even packed his toiletries in his overnight bag. Then he looked at the other bags. You have enough stuff here for a week, he joked when she came into the room wearing shorts and a tank top. I thought we were just going to the mountains for the weekend. You know I like to be prepared for anything, she joked. Why don't you load that stuff up while I finish up here? He saw that she had sandwiches on the counter and was packing a picnic basket with snacks and drinks for the ride out, as she used to do when they took day trips over the weekend. Sounds good, he said with a smile. Maybe this would be a good weekend after all, he thought. He loaded everything into the truck, helped Grace finish packing the food, locked the house, and set off for what he ardently hoped would be a good weekend in the mountains. This weekend is going to be the best ever, Grace gushed as Alex drove. Trust me, you'll have a great time. I'm looking forward to that, Alex replied, hoping she meant it. It took longer than Alex had planned to get out of the city, thanks to an accident on the freeway that brought traffic to a standstill. As a result, they were running almost 3 hours behind schedule, but that didn't dampen Grace's cheerful mood, which pleased Alex. He filled the gas tank once more when they reached the road that would take them to Richard's estate, then followed the winding road through the hilly, wooded terrain. It was well after dark when they reached the gate leading to Richard's sizable 2-story home. Grace had been given the code for the gate, and soon they pulled up to the sprawling brick mansion. Damn, this is one hell of a big house, Alex exclaimed. 3 men in dark suits and sunglasses approached the truck as Alex turned off the engine. I can get our luggage, Alex said as he opened the back door of the pickup. Thanks anyway, sir. But that's our job, one of the men said in a tone that held no humor. Another man held out his hand. Keys, sir. I need to park your vehicle, the other man said. Please do as they ask, sweetheart. Grace suggested in a tone that made it clear he should comply. He looked at the man asking for the keys and saw the telltale bulge in his jacket that indicated he was armed. Sure, Alex said, handing his keys to the second man as the other two men grabbed their luggage unceremoniously and walked off into the darkness without a word. Thank you, the man said mechanically. Alex watched as the men easily carried the heavy bags up the steps. Are you coming? Grace asked. Yeah, sure, on my way. Alex followed Grace and the two men up the stairs, wondering why they would need to be armed. Ah, there you are. I trust you had a safe trip? A tall man with dark curly hair boomed when they entered. Alex recognized the man as Michael Ward. He had met Richard a few times at company holiday events. As Alex watched, Grace and the man exchanged hugs. Then he turned to Alex. Alex, it's good to meet you again. I'm Michael Ward, he announced, extending a hand. Welcome to my humble abode. Thank you. A pleasure meeting you again, Mr. Palmer, Alex said, accepting Richard's hand. No need to be so formal. Alex, may I call you Alex? I have a feeling we'll be seeing a lot more of each other, Richard said with a slight smile, especially now that your wife is moving up in the firm. Of course, Alex said. I'm sorry we're running late. There was an accident on the freeway, Grace explained. So I heard, Richard said. I'm glad you made it safely. Are the others here? Grace asked. Others? Alex wasn't aware others would be here. Yes, they're all here. Unfortunately, they decided to turn in for the evening, wanted to get well rested before the festivities begin tomorrow, Richard replied. The man who took Alex's keys returned through the front door, handing the keys back to Alex. Thank you, Alex said, putting the keys in his pocket. By now, the two men who took their luggage had returned from the second floor. Frank, escort the Jeffersons to their room, if you would, Richard commanded. Yes, sir, one of the large men said. See you bright and early tomorrow morning, Richard said. Sleep well. Thank you, Grace said quietly, her eyes downcast demurely. Alex noticed but didn't say anything. He simply filed it in the back of his mind. Maybe Dad was right, he thought. This way, please, Frank commanded in a gravelly voice. Alex and Grace followed the man up the spiral staircase and down two hallways before stopping at a locked door. He pulled out a card key and held it before a reader, and Alex heard the door lock open. Frank opened the door and motioned for them to enter the room. Oh my, Grace gasped when they walked inside. The room was spacious and well-appointed. It even had its own bathroom with a double vanity and a large television monitor on the wall opposite the king-sized bed. A gas fireplace took up most of one wall. This is very nice, Alex said with forced cheerfulness as he looked around. I'm glad you approve, Frank said. He pulled out two card keys, one of which he handed to Grace and the other to Alex. These are your keys to the room. Keep them with you at all times, please. Breakfast will be served at 7 a.m. tomorrow morning. Good night. Good night, Grace replied as Frank left the room, closing the door. This is a very nice room, Alex said as he walked around, taking inventory of the room. Yes, it is, Grace agreed. As Alex began hanging his clothes in the closet, Grace put her things away, but Alex noticed she simply hung her garment bag in the closet, not taking her clothes out first. So, who are these other people Richard said would be here? He asked. Oh, just some bigwigs from the firm, Grace replied, not looking at him. And this new position, what is it exactly? Alex followed up. I'm Richard's new executive assistant, Grace told him. The position comes with a significant increase in pay, but I will have to travel from time to time. Are you okay with that? As long as it doesn't interfere with our lives, Alex said. We've talked about starting a family, you know. I know, but I may have to put that off for a while, Grace quietly said, at least until I get established in my new position. What time frame are you talking about? Alex asked. I don't know, maybe 6 months, maybe a little longer. Are you okay with that? She asked. I know this job is very important to you, Alex replied neutrally, wondering what exactly this position entailed and knowing that they weren't getting any younger. You have no idea, Grace told him. This is a huge step for me. All I'm asking for is some time and a little patience. Fair enough, Alex said, taking his wife in his arms. You know I'm very proud of you. Don't you? Really? Grace asked in a small voice. Of course, he responded, kissing her face. I love you, Grace. Don't ever forget it. I love you too, Rock, she replied. After they climbed into bed and turned out the lights, Alex reached for Grace, but her eyes were closed, and she appeared to be asleep. He sighed as this had been her pattern for the last couple of months. He turned on his side and fell asleep, frustrated. The sky was a clear, deep blue with not a hint of a cloud. The sun was high, and a slight breeze blew from the south. Suddenly, the sky grew dark and filled with large, menacing clouds. The slight breeze became a brisk wind that grew in intensity with each passing moment. A deep rumble could be heard as the sky grew darker and the clouds gathered. A brief flash of lightning could be seen in the distance as the storm clouds grew and the wind intensified. A sudden flash of lightning struck the ground close to his feet. When he looked down, he saw a beating heart pumping blood onto the ground. Alex had seen this dream many times except for the beating heart, and each time he experienced it, someone he knew died within the following 72 hours. The last time was 3 years ago. 2 days later, his older brother, Paul, was hit by a drunk driver and killed instantly. A year before that, his mother suffered a stroke just 12 hours after his dream, and she died 24 hours later, never regaining consciousness. Alex sat up in bed, sweat pouring off his body. He looked at the digital clock on his nightstand and saw it was 4 a.m. Although it was extremely early, Alex knew he had to contact his father. Grabbing his phone from the nightstand, Alex noticed he had no service. He got out of bed carefully so as not to awaken Grace, donned his trousers and t-shirt, then slipped on his shoes. Grabbing his card key, he opened the door to see one of Richard's armed security men at a small desk in the hallway. The man in the dark suit and glasses looked up when Alex opened the door. Is there a problem, Mr. Jefferson? The large man asked. I need to use a phone, and there's no cell service here, Alex said. Who do you intend to call? I need to call my father. It's important, Alex told him. This way, sir, the man said as he stood. Alex followed him to a smaller room off the hallway. You can use that phone, he added, pointing to a phone on a small table beside a chair. Just dial 9 for an outside line first. Thank you, Alex said as he sat in the chair. He began dialing his father's number and saw the man standing in the doorway. Can I have some privacy, please? Of course, the guard said, turning from the door. Alex couldn't believe the nerve of the man and wondered why he was armed. He finished dialing the number and waited. His father answered after the third ring. Hello, who is this? His father asked. Alex could tell the older man had just been woken up. Hi, Dad. It's me, Alex. Sorry for calling so early in the morning. I just wanted to make sure you were all right. I was in the middle of a very nice dream remembering your mother, but I'm okay, Alex. Did you have another one of your dreams? Yeah, Alex said quietly. He could hear the other man sigh on the other end. Same as you had before Paul's accident? His father asked. Exactly the same, Alex said. I see. Thanks for letting me know, son. I'm doing okay, but I'll keep a sharp eye out. Why don't you get back to sleep? Okay, I will, Dad. I just wanted to let you know, Alex told him. I appreciate that, son. I'm fine, though. I promise you're stuck with me for a while yet, his father promised. Remember what I said and watch your back. They ended the call, and Alex walked back to his room. Everything okay? The guard asked. Yeah, everything is fine, thanks, Alex said before opening the door to his room. He undressed and climbed back into bed, and Grace groaned as she rolled over to face him. Where did you go? Is everything okay? She asked groggily. Yes, everything is just fine. I had to call Dad, Alex said. Oh, she groaned before rolling back onto her side. From her breathing, Alex could tell she had gone back to sleep. He closed his eyes, but sleep eluded him for another hour as he kept thinking about the disturbing dream. Alex rolled out of bed at 7 a.m. and went to the bathroom to do his morning routine. Afterward, he took a quick shower, then changed into a clean pair of jeans and a polo shirt. Grace followed him into the bathroom after opening the blinds. Standing at the nightstand, Alex gathered his watch and wallet and looked out the window. He noticed the wrought iron bars attached to the outside of the window and wondered why they were there. There was no landing, and the concrete pad of the driveway had to be at least 30 feet down. Looking outside, Alex saw a helicopter sitting on a pad at least 50 yards from the house. He hadn't seen it before, but it was dark when they arrived the previous night. He also noticed guards carrying what looked like air-style rifles slung over their shoulders. Alex couldn't help but wonder, was Richard expecting trouble? "Are you ready for breakfast, sweetheart?" Grace asked when she came out of the bathroom. "Ready as he'll ever be," Alex said as he snapped his wristwatch. "What happened last night?" she asked. "Another dream," Alex said. "You mean like before your brother was killed?" "Yeah, exactly the same. I called Dad to make sure he was okay." "How is he?" she asked. "Fine. I caught him in the middle of a dream," Alex said. Grace snickered in a way he found vaguely disturbing as she finished dressing. "Come on, let's go downstairs and get some breakfast." "I'm starving," she said. "Don't forget your walking stick," she reminded Alex. The walking stick was a present from his father, given to Alex after he was discharged from the hospital years earlier. During his service in Afghanistan, the Humvee he was in got hit by an enemy RPG. 2 other Marines in the vehicle were killed instantly, while Alex and another Marine escaped, although severely wounded. The 2 Marines managed to take cover and defend themselves until help arrived. Alex spent months in surgery and rehab and was eventually given a medical discharge. Fortunately, the doctors saved Alex's leg but had to replace his left hip. The rehab helped Alex learn to walk again, and the walking stick helped considerably. Although he could get around fine now, he still experienced pain after extensive walking, so he continued to use his father's gift. They arrived at Richard's table to find 3 other men and a woman waiting for them. Alex had briefly met the men before and knew they were executives with Richard's law firm, although he couldn't remember their names. He had never seen nor met the woman before. "Everyone, I'd like to introduce my husband, Alex Jefferson," Grace announced. Alex shook hands with the others. "Jefferson? Huh? That's a rather distinguished name," observed Nick Benson, one of the firm's executives. "My parents were big on classic literature, so they named me after a famous American president," Alex replied. "Dad used to joke it was either that or Franklin." "Yeah, I seem to recall that name," Glenn replied with a smile. "He was quite the statesman." "That's what I heard," Alex replied. The woman smiled as Alex accepted her hand. "It's good to finally meet you, Mr. Jefferson. I've heard a lot about you." "I'm Megan Brooks," she said. "Pleasure to meet you, Miss King. Please call me Alex. I hope you've heard at least a few good things." "So, what do you do for the firm?" "I'm in charge of training and recruiting, and please feel free to call me Laura." "I have heard a lot of good things, and I have a feeling we'll be spending a lot of time together this weekend." "Oh?" Alex asked. "Why is that?" "With Grace's new position, there's going to be a lot of changes in your life," Richard stated before Laura could respond. "She's here to help you adjust." "Adjust? And why would I need to adjust to my wife's promotion?" Alex asked, more than a little concerned. He looked at Grace for an explanation, but none was forthcoming. "It's complicated," Richard stated bluntly. "Let's eat breakfast first, shall we? Maybe we can get to know each other a little before we get into the meat of things." They sat down as Richard's employees wheeled carts into the room. As Alex watched, they placed dishes in front of everyone, piled with eggs, bacon, toast, and fruit. Another employee walked around the table, pouring coffee into their cups. Alex also took stock of the armed security men, who took stations on either side of the door. "So, Alex, why don't you tell us a little about yourself?" Tom Carter, another executive, asked. "Grace says you were some kind of soldier or something." Alex glanced at Grace before answering. He had told her a little about his service, but it went over her head. As far as she was concerned, everyone who wore a uniform was in the army. "I was in the military, but I was never a soldier," Alex replied before taking a bite of his scrambled eggs, which he found delicious. "Oh, what were you then?" Rick asked, glancing at Grace. "I was in the Marines," Alex answered. "Thank you for your service," Richard said. "What did you do in the Marines, if you don't mind my asking?" "Not at all," Alex said. "I was a scout sniper assigned to a force reconnaissance unit when I was wounded." "Scout sniper? Huh?" mused Chris Harris, the third executive at the table. "So, basically you eliminated threats, right?" Alex saw the glances between the other executives and the security men before replying. I suppose that's one way of putting it, Alex said. The glances became expressions of concern, and Alex wondered what was happening here. 32 enemy soldiers didn't finish their missions, he added lightly, but in a tone like a rattlesnake giving fair warning. I haven't had to take action in several years, though. The military part of his mind chided himself. Had he betrayed his position or warned them off? Interesting. You never told us this, Grace, Richard said with a slight tightness in his voice, looking at Grace, who flushed slightly. It's not Grace's fault, Alex said before Grace could speak. I never told her exactly what I did in the service, partly because some of it is still classified and partly because that's a period of my life I'd much rather forget. But now you're an accountant, is that right? Rick asked hurriedly, breaking in to divert the tension that had suddenly rolled over the table like an overcast day. Yes. I was discharged after my rehab and went to college to finish my business degree. That's where I met Grace. I'm now a forensic accountant working for my father, Alex said. What does your father do? Glenn asked. He runs Jefferson Investigative Services. Works primarily for corporations, Alex said. I've heard of them, Rick said thoughtfully. They do good work, from what I've heard. They finished their breakfast, engaging mostly in small talk, but that didn't help Alex, who had a very uncomfortable feeling about all of this. He had learned to pay close attention to his instincts on the battlefield, as they had kept him alive more than once. Well, it looks like a beautiful day outside. Laura, why don't you take Alex for a tour around the property while we go out back? Richard asked. Of course, Laura replied. Alex looked at Grace and tried to gauge her thoughts but couldn't. She had an expression he would hate to play poker against. Go ahead, sweetheart. It'll be okay, she said encouragingly but a little stiffly. Yeah, okay, Alex said. He was uncomfortable with the situation but felt he couldn't do much now, so he acquiesced to Richard and Grace. Intel and recon, he told himself, grabbing his walking stick. He looked at Laura. Are you ready? Yes, I am, Laura replied with a brightness he knew was phony. Sure, Alex replied, hoping the churning in his gut would settle down. After you. Grace put a hand on his arm before he left, and he stopped and looked at her. Just remember that I love you, she whispered. I love you too, Alex said. He leaned in to kiss her, but she turned her head, shocked and humiliated. Alex backed off and walked away, not saying anything until he and Laura were far from the main house. Alex couldn't help but notice the heavily armed security men not far away from them. With Loris back to him, Alex pulled his phone out and activated the voice record app while observing that he somehow had 2 bars a week signal, but enough to make a call, then replaced it in his pocket. It's so beautiful out here, Laura finally said to break the ice. Yeah, Alex replied in a non-committal tone. They reached a wooden park bench overlooking a small pond and stopped. She sat down, so Alex followed her lead. What's going on here? He asked. You're a smart man, Alex. Why don't you figure it out? She asked in response. I've got an idea, but it's too horrifying to contemplate, Alex answered. Why don't you just come clean and tell me? All right. As you know, Grace has been picked to be Richard's next executive assistant, Laura began. Yes, I already know that. Grace told me that much. But there's more, isn't there? Yes, there is, Laura said. Your life is about to change, Alex. Whether it's for the better will depend on how you react. You know Grace loves you, don't you? I've heard her say so, but frankly, I'm having a hard time believing it right now. Trust me, she does love you, and she wants the best for the two of you. That's why she's willing to do whatever is necessary to guarantee your future, Laura lectured. You do support your wife and her career goals, don't you? Of course, I always have, Alex said. He felt like he had one night years ago, slowly creeping across the ground, probing the sand for mines under a high-tech heat-dispersing cape. I'm glad to hear you say that. Then you should understand that the next year or two will only be a minor blip, a bump in the road of a long, happy marriage. A year or two. She mentioned 6 months. Why are you saying that? What's going to happen over the next 2 years? Alex asked pointedly. And what exactly is your role in all of this? I'll get to that. My role is to prepare you for what will happen and to make sure you fully understand and embrace Richard's expectations for you and your wife. Why should I care about Richard's expectations of me? I don't answer to him, and he doesn't sign my paycheck, Alex snarled, his patience growing thin. No, he doesn't, but he does sign hers, and your cooperation will go a long way toward making Grace's job easier, Laura explained. Cooperation? What the hell are you talking about? I'm sure you've noticed that Richard is what most people would call an alpha male, Laura stated as though it was as obvious as a giant flashing red neon sign. In other words, he's a self-absorbed narcissistic jerk, Alex growled. Laura chuckled at that, the first genuine sound she had made and the first he believed. Let's just say he expects people to fall in line and do as they're expected. That includes Grace, and by extension, you. In other words, he wants to have his way with my wife and expects me to just accept it. Isn't that what you're telling me? His temperature was rising, but for now, it was firmly controlled. I wouldn't quite use that terminology, but essentially yes. In fact, they've already been intimate several times, Laura said, noticing the pained look on Alex's face. And you know this how? Alex asked. I was there. I recorded it, Laura said in an even tone as though recording two people having an Aussie kiss was the most natural thing one could do. Would you like to see some of the video? You're kidding, right? Not at all, Alex. Here, take a look. You might find it interesting, Laura said, handing Alex her phone. He looked at the short video clip of Grace and Richard kissing like animals. It is interesting. Mind if I keep a copy? Alex asked. It would come in handy for his divorce, he thought. Not at all. I saved that clip especially for you. Using the phone's Bluetooth capability, Alex saved a copy to his phone. Tell me something, Alex. How has your love life been lately? Not that it's any of your business, but it's been practically non-existent for the last couple of months. Why? Actually, it is my business, and the reason is simple. Richard instructed Grace to cut you off most of the time. He's quite possessive of his property. What? And she just went along with it? Alex growled between clenched teeth, his anger growing. Of course. He is her master now. She answers to him just as all of his previous assistants answered to him, and he will expect you to answer to him as well. Alex cringed at the term master. He can expect in one hand and wait for the other, and see which one fills up first. Alex snarled through gritted teeth. He saw the smirk on her face and felt like wiping it off with the back of his hand. So what does the jerk expect from me? Money? Hardly. Laura chuckled. He expects your obedience, your submission, and he will expect you to publicly display that tonight before the other senior partners. What are you talking about? What does he expect me to do? The dynamics of your marriage will change drastically while Grace is in her current position. To reflect that, Richard has documents he needs you to sign. These documents state that you willingly surrender your marriage rights, property, and assets to him while Grace is his assistant. After he has had his way with you, he will expect you to get on your knees in front of him, in full view of your wife and the others, and he will expect you to kiss him to completion, Laura said with a face devoid of emotion. I know it is difficult to hear, but Grace expects it of you as well. She's quite eager to see you do it. In this way, you will cede any authority of your marriage to him for as long as he deems to own her. Let me see if I understand what you just said. Your jerk boss wants me to sign everything over to him. Let him humiliate me, then kiss him in front of Grace and the other executives. Are you kidding me? Alex growled, murder in his eyes. I am not kidding, Alex, and yes, that is what he wants. He also expects you to follow through, and so does Grace. Of course, the whole encounter will be captured on video. Of course. That way he can hold it over my head. Sounds like extortion or blackmail to me. You make it sound so tawdry, but it would be used to keep you in line, Laura said nonchalantly. After you have submitted yourself to him, he will take Grace to bed. They will leave for Las Vegas early tomorrow morning, where they will spend the weekend. And where will I be while they play in Vegas? Alex asked. You will remain here, confined to your room. You will be fed and watched over. When they return, you will drive Grace back to your residence. You will follow her directions to the letter without question, Laura replied. So if I understand you correctly, I'm to be literally screwed over, made to kiss a jerk, then kept prisoner here against my will. And what would I get out of this? If you go along with Richard's program, you will be left relatively unscathed except for some minor humiliation. And when he's finished with Grace, you will be well compensated. And I take it that you, the jerk, and my soon-to-be ex-wife conspired to destroy my marriage, take my life's work, and literally humiliate me. Am I right? I wouldn't put it quite like that, but I suppose from your point of view, yes. We worked on this together, Laura said in a neutral tone of voice. Did he do this with his other assistants? Alex asked. Yes, Laura said. And they went along with this? They did, Laura told him. In fact, the husbands enjoyed it tremendously. What would it hurt? Grace would love to see you kiss her master. I'm sure she would. They can both kiss my butt and get lost, Alex hissed. And you can tell that jerk if he makes a move on me, I'll do everything I can to make sure it'll be the last thing he ever does. I understand you're angry, Alex, and you have every right to be, but you would benefit in the end in more ways than one. But there's more. More? Alex asked, shocked. The document requires you to obtain a vasectomy at your earliest convenience, and it states that you will accept and take responsibility for any children Grace and Richard produce. In fact, she intends to make a show of flushing her birth control after you sign. And if I don't go along with all of this? Let's just say you wouldn't like the consequences, Laura stated. A few tried to fight Richard and found themselves penniless and convicted sex offenders in prison for illegal videos that just happened to be found on their personal devices. And you may be aware of what happens to sex offenders in prison. Not a pretty existence. That sounds like a threat, Alex responded. Call it what you want. All right, I will, Alex replied as he pulled the pocket. He stopped, saved the audio recording, and looked through his contacts until he found what he was looking for. Verifying that he had a signal, he selected the number he wanted, then held the phone to his ear. What are you doing? Laura asked, her face turning red with anger. Alex smiled and put a finger to his lips, indicating that she should remain silent. Sheriff Jefferson, the man said when he answered Alex's call. Uncle Paul, how are you doing? Alex asked. Rock, what's the word? Dad was right. I need an extraction, fast. You got the address? I got it, son. I also have the coordinates from your phone. What's your situation? I counted at least 20 heavily armed men. There's a gate at the entrance. Code is 3852, unless they changed it since last night. Palmer and 3 of his executives are here, along with his trainer. She just gave me the lay of the land, so to speak. Got it all on audio. I'll send it to you, Alex said. Copy that, Paul replied. We're on our way. ETA approximately 10 minutes. Can you hold out that long? I think so, Uncle Paul, as long as you're willing to call it self-defense. And thanks. My pleasure. Wouldn't want to see anything happen to my favorite nephew. What about Grace? According to Palmer's trainer, she's an accomplice and already fully involved with Palmer, so we drop her. I'm sorry to hear that, son, Paul said sadly. Yeah, me too. Well, you hang tough, young man. We'll be there shortly. With that, Alex ended the call, then sent the audio file to his uncle. What did you just do? A frightened Laura asked after Alex replaced his phone. Who did you just call? I called in the cavalry, Alex replied with a smile. I need to get back to the house and warn the others, Laura stammered, starting to rise, clearly disoriented by the turn of events. Alex shook his head, held her hand, and gently pulled her back down on the bench. She stared at his expression in horrified fascination. I think not. Well, sit here and enjoy the sunshine for a few minutes. Might be the last sunshine you ever see, Alex said, allowing himself a satisfied smile. I think you might have bitten off a little more than you can chew this time, Richard, Ryan said after Grace and the 4 men took their seats next to the large pool behind Richard's house. Why? Because Grace's husband is a former Marine? Big deal, Richard scoffed. What's he going to do anyway? He's alone, unarmed, and surrounded by a small platoon of armed security. If he rejects Laura's proposal, then we go to Plan B. Just be careful, Rick cautioned. Don't worry, Richard said. I've got it all under control. We'll spike his drinks tonight, and when the time comes, he'll be more than happy to do what I want. I can't wait to see that, Grace said. Are you going to make him go through with it like you did the others? Of course, Richard said. By the time this weekend is over, your husband will be begging to please me, he added, causing Grace to giggle like a schoolgirl. Just don't push him too hard, Ryan said. He's not like the others. They were weak. He's not. They're all the same, Ryan, Richard sneered. No, they're not. This guy is a combat marine, trained to kill. You need to be ready for anything. Settle down, Ryan. I've got this, Richard scolded. But I am curious about something. Why didn't you know about your husband's service? He asked Grace. Well, it's like Alex said. He never told me any details, Grace replied. All he would say is that he was in the military. It doesn't matter, Richard snorted. He's going down tonight, and your career will take off. What if he files for divorce? Grace asked. Then he'll ruin him the same way I did the others. He'll end up in prison for trumped-up charges or worse. Don't worry, dear. They'll take care of him. What's that sound? Glenn asked, looking around. Everyone stopped talking and listened. The unmistakable sounds of helicopters could be heard all around them. Suddenly, one of Richard's security men ran to the pool. We've got a problem, Mr. Palmer, he huffed. What's that? Richard asked. They heard shouts and the sounds of men scuffling. Then they saw two uniformed deputies in body armor walk to the pool, their rifles ready. Freeze, one of the deputies ordered. Drop your weapon, the deputy told Richard's security man, who instantly obeyed, not wanting to get shot. Other deputies poured in, placing Grace, Richard, and the other three men in handcuffs. What's going on? Richard demanded. They'll have your badges for this. Quiet. You're all under arrest, a deputy stated before reading a laundry list of charges. He finished by reading their Miranda rights. The deputies led all 5 detainees around the building, where they saw 4 helicopters, a bus, and 3 large vans. Officers were everywhere, escorting the handcuffed and disarmed security men to the bus. Grace saw Alex standing next to a large man in a khaki uniform. Alex, what's going on? She cried out. Alex and the large man walked toward her. Your little party is over, Grace, Alex said calmly. I'm sorry, I forgot my manners. Grace, this is Sheriff Paul Jefferson. You remember my Uncle Paul, don't you? Uncle Paul, Grace gasped weakly. I didn't know you were a sheriff. I guess it slipped my mind, Paul said with a smirk. Alex, please, this is all a big misunderstanding. You have to believe me, Grace cried desperately. No, Grace, I don't have to believe you. In fact, I don't think I've ever been more shocked and disappointed in my whole life. They'll be visiting my attorney ASAP to have divorce papers drawn up. As of now, you're dead to me. Do you understand? Dead. With that, Alex grabbed her left hand and pulled her rings off, depositing them in his pocket. You son of a bitch, Richard snarled as he unsuccessfully tried to jerk free of the 2 deputies holding him. They'll be out of jail in no time, and then I'm going to kill you. You hear me, you piece of trash? That sounds like a threat to me. What do you think, Uncle Paul? Alex asked with a smirk that trumped all of Richard's previous condescension by a wide margin. Sure sounded like one of me as well, Paul said. Well, just add that to all the other charges against him, and ITLL help make sure he never gets bail. Don't worry, Mr. Palmer. My boys will take good care of you, he chuckled. And your friends. Get these people out of here, he ordered the deputies, who instantly complied. Alex and Paul watched as the perpetrators were loaded into the bus. Alex felt as if the last several years of his life were a lie. He had loved Grace from the moment they met, and now everything had fallen apart. Paul slapped him on the shoulder. ITLL get better, son. Trust me on that, he said. Paul had been through a divorce from a cheating spouse years ago and knew the pain Alex felt. Thanks, Uncle Paul, for everything. You're welcome, son. If you need anything, give me a call. And tell your dad I said hello. I think he has a bottle of his best waiting for your visit. I will. Is it safe for me to get my things? I need to get the hell out of here. Sure. I think they're just about finished up inside the place anyway, Paul told him. After they said their goodbyes, Alex packed his things and went home. 1 week later, after commiserating with his father, Alex saw the family attorney and had divorce papers drawn up according to the prenuptial agreement they had signed before the marriage. He waited until they were served before visiting Grace in the county jail. This will be the one and only time I visit you, Grace, he said when she took her seat. I legally need to make sure you got the papers. I got them, Grace said quietly. I've already signed them and sent them back. Good. As I'm sure you could tell, I followed the prenuptial. They'll wait until after your trial to dispose of your things. I appreciate that, Grace said. I don't understand something. How did you know? You'll hear the details in court, so we'll give you the brief version. I suspected something was happening for a couple of months before that weekend, but I didn't have any proof. About 4 months before that Labor Day, the estranged husband of one of Richard's so-called assistants approached Dad with a pretty wild story. He also brought some spreadsheets and documents he said his estranged wife got from Richard's system. Dad had me look over the spreadsheets to see what I could find. Naturally, I couldn't say anything to you, privilege and conflict of interest and all that sort of thing. It took some time, but we finally found what we were looking for, evidence of all kinds of shady financial dealings with some rather unsavory characters. Your lover did an excellent job hiding them, but not good enough. A couple of weeks before that weekend, Dad turned what he had over to the feds, who were more than interested in Palmer's dealings. In fact, they were set to raid your offices sometime in November. Dad said I needed to be very careful that weekend. He relayed what his contact told him, even though he found it very difficult to believe. We spoke with my Uncle Paul, who, as you know, is the county sheriff where Richard's property is located. I had hoped nothing would happen, but that's not how it worked. Megan Brooks told me what you and your lover had planned. By the way, I recorded that little conversation. I'm glad we live in a state where only one party's permission is required for a recording like that. I do have a few questions for you, though. What do you want to know? Grace asked. How long before that weekend were you involved with your so-called master? About 2 months, Grace replied. Alex was surprised that she was so candid. That's about the time things fell off with us. Did he tell you to cut me off? Yes, she said quietly, her face turning red. I suppose I should get tested for STIs then, Alex said, causing Grace even more embarrassment. Did you really want to see me do what you were planning? Grace looked down, refusing to meet her husband's gaze. Well? He pressed angrily. She looked back up at him with tears in her eyes again. Yes, she said. Surely you knew I would never willingly agree to do that. I would rather die first. So why? Because I was so smitten with Richard that I would have gone along with anything he wanted. You don't understand. He liked the feeling of having power over everyone around him, and if I didn't comply, he had what he called a plan B, Grace admitted. You mean the drugs? Yes. They found the vial with the chemical he intended to use on me. I had nothing to do with that, Grace claimed. That's interesting because they found your prints all over the vial, Alex said, causing Grace to look at him with shock. Which tells me you were part of his plot against me. No, I never wanted to hurt you, she sobbed. The evidence says otherwise, Grace. You not only cheated on me, you plotted and schemed with your so-called master to destroy me as a man. So there's no way back. Nope, none for you. No forgiveness. Nothing. Like I told you that day, you are dead to me. Alex hissed as Grace shed hot tears but didn't flinch. I've wasted enough time on you. Goodbye, Grace. Enjoy what's left of your miserable life. Before I go, I need to let you know that there are some friends I have in prison who are waiting to meet you. It will be fun. With that, he stood and walked away, immune to her tears. After several court appearances, Richard, Laura, and the others were found guilty of all the charges leveled against them. As the ringleader, Richard received a life sentence in federal prison, meaning he would never be paroled. Having played a minor role in Richard's illegal financial schemes, the 3 executives were sentenced to 20 years for their parts in Richard's schemes. Laura and Grace were given somewhat lighter sentences. Several others in the firm were charged for their roles in the conspiracy. A few turned state's evidence against Richard and were given immunity as part of a plea. By the time the smoke cleared, the Evergreen Legal Group no longer existed. Alex's divorce from Grace went through quickly and without a hitch due to Grace's prison sentence. Alex boxed up all of her possessions and placed them in storage for her parents to collect at their convenience. On Veterans Day, Alex, his father, and Paul celebrated with a barbecue and fireworks. Paul brought a guest to the festivities and introduced her to Alex. He was instantly taken by the attractive, shapely, brownied brunette in front of him and had a difficult time not staring at her welted legs set off by a pair of short denim cutoffs. Son, this is Lisa Simmons. She just moved here from Houston and started up with me a couple of weeks ago. You're a deputy? Alex asked. Sure am, Lisa said with a confident smile that lit her face. She's also a former Marine, Paul said. An MP, like your dad. Marines, huh? Lisa said. Aura, Aura, Alex replied. I think we're going to get along just fine, Alex gushed with a huge grin. I think so too, Lisa agreed. Buy a girl a beer? Sure, Alex replied. I could use a fresh one myself. He grabbed 2 beers from his father's ice chest and handed one to her. Your uncle told me about your last op. Sounds perfectly executed, Lisa said when they sat down. I'm sorry about what you went through with your ex. Yeah, well, I guess it happens, Alex remarked quietly. The divorce will be final soon. How about you? I saw the mark on your ring finger. Were you married as well? I was, Lisa said, but apparently my husband wasn't, if you know what I mean. I came home early one night and found him in bed with his secretary in my bed. No less. I'm sorry to hear that. If you ask me, he was an idiot and a fool, Alex told her as he took in her figure. I agree, Lisa said. I'm just glad we didn't have any children. Do you have kids? No, thankfully. We were talking about starting a family, then things went to hell in a handbasket, Alex said. Alex and Lisa talked for much of the evening and had a blast when Paul and Alex's father set off the fireworks. By the time the evening was over, Alex felt much better. At the very least, he believed he had met a kindred spirit in Lisa. Are you about ready to head back, Lisa? Paul asked after they finished the fireworks display. I guess it is about that time, she remarked before turning to Alex. I had a wonderful time, Alex. It was a real pleasure meeting you. I had a wonderful time as well, Lisa, and am very glad I got to meet you. In fact, I'd like to see you again if that's all right. That would be more than all right, Alex, she said, a broad smile on her face. Hey, erase my number, she added, handing him a card with her cell number. Your uncle keeps me busy, but I'm usually off Saturday nights. Give me a call. Will do, Alex said, returning her smile. He took her card, observing the wink and smile from his uncle. I'll call you this Thursday. Talk to you then, Lisa said before kissing his cheek. They said their goodbyes and left. Nice-looking young lady, Alex's father said after they left. Yes, very nice, Alex said with a massive grin. I hope you intend to keep your promise to her, the older man said. Absolutely, Alex said. Good man, his father said, slapping Alex on the back. Come on, help me clean up and let's see if we can polish off the rest of that beer. You going to give me the day off tomorrow to sleep it off? Alex asked. Hell no, his father replied with a laugh. Laughing in return, Alex joined his father, his mind on a sweet brunette with the sexiest legs he had seen in quite some time. Waterloo, Waterloo. Where will you meet your Waterloo? Every puppy has his day. Everybody has to pay. Everybody has to meet his Waterloo. Alex thought to himself as he cleaned up. Thanks for watching. How would you react if you were in Alex's shoes? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more thrilling stories. I imagine many have found their share of grief in the simple act of reading a bank statement. It's likely a common source of distress, even leading to far bigger problems than mine, but knowing that didn't ease the blow for me. I was going through some paperwork on my wife's desk at home, just trying to check if she'd settled the utility bill or something equally routine and harmless. That's when I spotted it tucked under a stack of bills and miscellaneous documents, a statement from Maple Bank. It stood out to me, probably because we handle everything through Pine Bank, and the blue heading immediately caught my eye. It was ironic. Really, she had chosen a different bank to keep things concealed. But that very difference is what made me stop and flip it open. First, I checked the name at the top, and it read Emily Roberts, so no surprise there. But the address, ID never heard of, somewhere in the north end of Riverside, way north of Mansfield, where we lived. Next, I checked the figure at the bottom, 18300, a tidy balance, but where had it come from? I had no idea. Then I looked at the list of transactions over the last 3 months and was staggered at the regular large sums of money that had been going into it. 700 one day, over 900 a week later, then 650 just 6 days later, and so it went on. Now, I make a good living from my business and was used to largish sums of money, but Emily only did a bit of part-time work for some marketing firm, an occasional afternoon or, more likely, an evening at the most, a weekend standing in for someone at some event or other, and even then mainly only for the fun of it, as it didn't pay a fortune. It was when I scanned the list of payouts that I was really thrown, as there, every month, was the same sum of money taken out by standing order, 500. The sum sounded worryingly familiar. I walked over to her cabinet, a fancy old-fashioned roll-top affair from the late 19th century, opened it, and got out my wife's filing folder. She was always very neat and precise, Emily, and I knew exactly where to look, as we shared everything, no secrets between us. Or at least there hadn't been till then. I found the Pine Bank statements and scanned through them quickly till I found what I wanted, having no compunctions about going through her bank details as she showed them to me regularly. There it was, in black and white, her salary from the agency, $500 every month. I was lost, absolutely lost. It seemed that Emily was paying herself her own salary from her own bank account. Why the hell would she do that? Did she really have a job at all? Where on earth did the money come from in the first place? Was this something to worry about? And was it any of my business? Like hell it was. What was Emily up to? I grabbed the Maple Bank statement again and studied it in more detail, realizing that virtually the only money ever withdrawn seemed to be the monthly payments, whereas the payments in were sporadic, frequent, but with no pattern to them. It then occurred to me that there was an awful lot more money going in than coming out, so I looked back at the balance at the bottom of the last page. Bloody hell, it wasn't 18300. ID missed a zero, and it was 184,000. My name is John Roberts. I'm 45, quite presentable, and run my own construction business where I employ 2 other people. My wife Emily is 38, 7 years younger than me, and to my mind just about the right age difference. I give her my maturity, such as I have, my experience in life, and a very comfortable lifestyle. She gives me her relative youth, her beauty which she has in abundance, and all the fun in the world. We both give one another our loving, both spiritually and physically, without reserve. We are both, without doubt, after 6 years of marriage, still head over heels in love with one another, as I had been since our first day. I'd been up in Riverside for a meeting with a guy to discuss some deal with a big contractor, and I was sitting in the hotel bar afterward, thinking about the possible advantages of going along with their idea. Then Emily walked in, and my insides flipped. It's not that I didn't have a girlfriend. In fact, I probably had too many, but none of them were that special. Somehow I knew that she could be special, but only if I could get to know her. Emily was 55, tall, slim, with nice, shapely tan legs that seemed to go on forever from the dainty high heels on her feet till they disappeared under the very short cocktail dress that she wore. She had longish blonde hair and deep blue eyes with a cute little turned-up nose. My dream girl wasn't a classic beauty, but she didn't need to be, and every man in the place must have been eyeing her up, all no doubt with similar thoughts to my own. She simply oozed breeding, elegance, confidence, fun, and sex, and not necessarily in that order. I'm sure everyone watched her as she looked around, nodding to the receptionist who obviously knew her, no doubt a regular resident. Then she looked straight at me, and my insides did a somersault as her soft blue eyes melted away any doubts that I wanted her. I smiled back and acknowledged her, wondering what the hell to do next, but didn't have to worry about it. A smile that would have lit up the street outside flashed across her face, and she walked towards me, suggesting that maybe. "Hi, you must be John," she said, to my surprise. "John, not Dave," I replied, my voice perhaps a bit hoarse. "John, Dave, what's the difference?" She laughed, and I wasn't about to argue with her. "May I sit down?" she asked in her rather clipped, very Midwest accent, but very sweet. Of course," came my urgent response, leaping up to pull the chair back for her. Even the way she sat down showed class, as if she had been taught how to do it at some posh finishing school. I wondered why me? What had I done to earn the attention of this dreamin' legs of a woman? How on earth did she know my name? "I'm Emily," she said. "Sorry I'm late, but I got held up. Thanks for waiting." She then looked at me and asked, "Are you okay, John?" I was fine, but she later laughed as she told me that I had looked totally shocked. I recovered quickly, however, and within moments we were engaged in gentle banter, delighted to discover that we shared so many interests: the same music, tennis, Italian food, and, believe it or not, even soccer. Emily was an educated woman and could speak about a whole range of subjects, unlike the others that I had been with lately. Then her mobile rang. She excused herself and answered it. I heard her say, "No, I'm here." "No, he's here as well. Couldn't be, heck, here with me." "Oh dear, oh golly, hang on a moment." She looked at me quizzically, the smile returning to her lovely features, and I stared back. Were you expecting me by any chance? She asked. No, but I'm very pleased you arrived, I replied cheekily. You're not John Green at all, are you? No, I'm John Roberts. Oh, she said as she giggled and lifted her mobile up. She said into it, I was late, and I've got the wrong John, or Dave, actually. Her use of profanities with her posh accent was wonderful, sounded so out of place yet so natural. She turned her head and half covered her mouth so that I could not make out the next few exchanges between her and whoever was on the other end of the line. I just knew I was going to lose her in the next few minutes and desperately tried to think of something witty to say the moment she ended the call. Then Emily looked back at me, still holding the phone, that smile verging on a grin spreading back across her face. No, he's quite cute actually, she said into the phone but staring straight at me, making sure that I could hear. Rather good-looking in a rugged sort of way. I think I may have blushed. Okay then, give him my apologies. Next time he's in the US, maybe, and she finished her conversation, slipping her mobile back into her bag. Well then, she said, looks like I've missed my appointment. Never mind. The smile never left her face. Assuming you're free this evening, what do you fancy doing, and how about we do it together? I refrained from telling her what my first choice would have been and suggested that we have dinner. She readily agreed, and that's exactly what we did, the best meal of my life, and I hardly noticed what we ate. I was already under her spell. Emily told me about her job in marketing, how she set up meetings, arranged discreet functions, helped her agency to put people together in the right place at the right time. She obviously loved it, and I was already hoping that she could love me as much. After the meal, I walked her back to the taxi rank, overjoyed to see that there was a small queue and that I would have more time to chat and this time to hold her. I put my arm around her, and she snuggled up, sliding her arm around my waist and cuddling up to me. I kissed her lightly on the cheek, and she returned the favor, just the sweet smell of her sending my senses into overdrive. Then she looked around, maneuvered me between her and the others in the queue, put her arms up around my neck, and pulled me down till our lips met. Heaven. Just the briefest of touches, but it was like discovering the land of milk and honey, and I had the honey in my arms. I got carried away and almost disgraced myself as I kissed her more hungrily, running my hands over her back, feeling the soft curve as it descended down to her bottom. Hey, hang on, she cried and then laughed. Give a girl a chance, can't you? We've only just met. I drew back, disappointed but not really, frustrated but not really. This was some special girl, and worth the effort, worth the wait. Sorry, I apologized. Got carried away. And she giggled deliciously yet again. Slowly, she said. Kiss me slowly. It'll be worth it in the long run. Christ, I was lost, and I think it was then that I fell in love with Emily, my wife that was. On our first accidental date, I suggested we might go back to my hotel for a nightcap, but she'd have none of it, teasing me that I was after a little more than that and that a first date was just too soon. Can I see you again? I asked, and she teased me again, humming and hawing about whether it would be worth it, all the time holding on to me, holding me against her beautiful slim body and sending me crazy with desire. Okay, she relented at last, shrugging her lovely shoulders. I'll ring you. What's your number? I don't trust you, I said a bit boldly. You give me yours, and I'll ring you. No can do, John, Emily replied quietly. I don't give my number out, especially to handsome strangers. I'm afraid I'll ring you. We made a compromise and agreed to meet the following Thursday. Too long for me, but the earliest she could manage. What was I going to do about this newfound knowledge about my wife's affairs? Why did she have all this money, and where did it come from? Sure, her parents were rich, owned an estate down in Georgia, hunted, shot pheasants, and owned a fair share of one of the smaller investment banks, one that had survived the aftermath of the big crash as well. So obviously the family was well connected. There was no reason why my wife wouldn't have money, even sums like that. But where had it come from, and why an obscure, if substantial, sums? It had to be something to do with the marketing company she worked for, but really, I had no idea. I'd ask her. I just knew I couldn't. If she was hiding it from me, then there was a reason, and I had to find out that reason, and whatever it cost, I have to admit it frightened me a bit. Though it seemed impossible, it seemed that Emily seemed to be mixed up in some shady deal or something. I had to go down to Riverside a few days afterward, so I looked up the address on the statement. It was a swanky area and rare of money, old money, just the sort of place Emily's family would feel comfortable in. At least that relaxed me a little. I looked at the brass plates on the door, but none of them meant anything, just a couple catching my eye: Prestige Firm and Silvercrest Agency, the others all being accountants or stockbrokers by the sound of them. I waited around for a while, but nobody arrived or left. No joy there. I had drawn a blank and didn't know how to proceed. All I could do was confront her, but that didn't appeal at all. She was hiding something from me, and now it seemed possible her family was involved. I had to find out what, and perhaps more importantly, why. Our second date was memorable, and I remember quite clearly what she wore. The tight denim jeans and white sweater would have looked good on any attractive woman. Michael Lauren just has that ability, but on her, it was stunning. I'm sure it was for women like my wife that designers like him got their inspiration. It was a woman like my wife, perhaps, that launched 1,000 ships. We went to the theater, then on for a late dinner. It was superb. Again, no idea at all what we ate. Afterward, the two of us strolled down the banks of the river, arm in arm like lovers have done throughout time, and I sort of assumed she would come back to my hotel. She did. And I sort of assumed she would come up to my room. She did. And I sort of assumed that she would join me in bed. She didn't. She wouldn't. Not that we didn't enjoy ourselves, and not that I didn't manage to persuade her out of her sweater, her beautiful firm breasts being everything and more than I could ever have hoped for. She grabbed me, kissed me passionately, forcing her tongue in between my lips, twirling it around mine. The very taste of her sending me into a trance. My fingers started to undo the top button, and she gasped, cried out, her hips already gyrating, thrusting herself up to my hand. Then she stopped, just like that, realizing perhaps how far we were going and what it would lead to. No, please, no, she whispered, holding my hand but without the resolve to actually push it away. I'm not ready. Not yet. Please don't. It was maybe the most difficult decision I ever made in my life till then. I stopped, pulled back. She made no attempt to stop me, almost daring me to defy her, looking at me imploringly. However, trusting me not to. Then the moment was over, and we cuddled up, kissing and holding one another tightly. Bloody hell, we were adults, me in my 40s and her in her 30s. But she wasn't ready. Not yet. I asked what the problem was, if there was indeed a problem, and she nodded, whispered yes, and then burst into tears. What can you do if you love the woman? And by then I undoubtedly did. Then you accept it. I held her tightly, spoke to her calmly, and told her that everything was okay. We lay there like that, and my passion died slowly down, only my love for her remaining. A good hour later, she sighed and eventually got up, apologized, and tears started to run down her cheeks again. I'm sorry, she whimpered. I'm in such a mess, such an awful mess. You've no idea at all. I pulled her tight to me, the tighter the better, to make all her problems go away, and eventually, for the time being at least, they did. Thank you, John, she said at last. You are the most wonderful man. She kissed me, and everything seemed fine. We stayed there cuddling for some time, but it had to end, and I found myself escorting her out to the taxis yet again. 1 in the morning and still no sex, but ID never felt so bloody good in my life. I thought about confronting Emily with the problem of where all the money had come from and why was she paying herself. At best, it could be from her family, maybe cash they were stashing away from the tax man. That took my fancy for some time, but it was too easy, too convenient, and I knew there was more to it. I had no other explanation, nothing at all, just a knot building up in my stomach that not all was as it seemed, and that I was in for a major shock. Though even then, I did not imagine how big a shock I was in for. I followed her one evening, all the way to Riverside, when she was off on one of her jobs for the marketing firm, keeping her Lexus carefully in my sights to see if she really did go to the hotel where her company had set up some meeting or other, or whether she would slip off to meet someone sinister. But no, there she was, pulled up outside the correct hotel, good as gold, elegantly stepping out of her car and handing the keys to some attendant. Nothing to get upset about, and several hours wasted by following her all the way down from Mansfield. What a bloody fool I had become. I resolved to just ask her. The explanation would surely be quite simple. I'd ask her that very night when she got back, however late it might be. But she didn't come back that night and woke me in the morning, the ring of the telephone bringing me back into the real world, away from my tormented sleep as I raised myself from the sofa where I had spent the night waiting for her return. "Hi, John," she chirped as happy and bright as a lark. "Sorry, got really tied up in some discussions last night, and the company paid for a room at the hotel for me. Went well, though. Be back before lunchtime. How about lunch at the bridge, and I'll tell you about it." "Why didn't you ring me last night?" I demanded. "I've been worried." "I did," she said with concern, but there was no answer. "I left a message." I looked down, and sure enough, the message light was flashing on the phone. She must have rung when I was on my way back from Riverside, and I hadn't noticed when I'd come in with all the other things on my mind. I agreed to meet her at the bridge, but I was still confused. I felt the world closing in on me. I didn't know what to do or what else to say. The next week, I followed her again, feeling like a traitor, hating myself for the distrust that I felt and the thoughts that were permeating my brain. Our third date was a defining moment. I looked forward to it like an adolescent, hoping against hope that all would go well, hoping that I might get her into bed, but even more than that, praying that the date would go well, that she would be happy, and that the awkward tensions of our previous date would not resurface. We met on neutral ground, halfway between Riverside and Mansfield, at a lovely little inn that I had discovered some months before. It was an inspired choice, and Emily was relaxed from the start. Everything I could have wished for, from the moment she turned every head in the place when she arrived till she whispered in my ear at the end of our meal. "Do they have rooms here, John?" she asked, and my prayers seemed answered. It would be difficult to describe how wonderful that night was, but I'll try. I was no virgin by a long way, but it seemed that I had discovered one, a rare find in one so beautiful, already into her 30s. She was so nervous as I undressed her, as if I had been the first one to ever do so, shivering as I undid her dress and allowed it to drop to the floor. I rested her down back on the bed, determined that if it was to be her first time, then she would never forget it. Her breathing was heavy and rapid, her eyes closed. "John, John, please, John," she whispered huskily, but the rest was lost as a shudder ran through her lovely body that could only have been one thing. Her body relaxed, and she lay back, opening her eyes at last, looking up at me with an expression that said only one thing. I love you, John. I really love you," my woman stuttered uncertainly. "I think I'm ready now. Please be gentle." Then we had amazing sex. I took back over control from her, withdrawing just a little as I made love to her, and she returned it in full. We lay silently in each other's arms, relishing one another's nakedness, both satisfied and contented. "Thank you, John," Emily whispered into my chest. "Thank you, my love." I kissed her and told her how much I loved her as well. "I needed that, John," she said after a few moments. "I've needed that for a long time, and am just so glad it was you." The second time that I followed Emily was even easier. I knew the hotel where her meeting was scheduled, and I let Emily get ahead, arriving half an hour or so after her and wondering what the hell I was doing there and quite what I was going to do. I slunk into the reception area, terrified that she would spot me, having no idea what explanation I could possibly make for my being there. She wasn't there. Of course, why should she be? So I made my way to the bar, peeping in, already having decided that this was all so stupid, so childish, and that I would leave immediately if she wasn't there. But Emily was there, in the bar, chatting to some guy. She was sat with her back to me, but I knew it was her. The man she was talking to looked American, much older than Emily, maybe in his late 50s, expensively dressed and impeccably groomed. I felt the tension draining out of me as I realized that he was exactly as he should be, a rich client of the agency, obviously some businessman that she was discussing some arrangements with. I felt such a fool, cursing myself for suspecting that Emily had been involved with some man, though I hadn't even allowed myself to admit to those thoughts till that moment. What was I to do then? I was still no nearer to the truth about the money, but at least my main fear had been Alej wasn't having an affair. Maybe this guy was something to do with all the money she'd been hiding away, but I was no super sleuth and had no way of progressing further. Go home. I thought to myself, just go home and stop being so silly. Another few hours wasted, driving up to Riverside and back, just because of my stupid doubts. Then Emily stood up, and my stomach went tight. She looked fabulous and so sexy in a tight black mini dress that just skimmed below her bottom, leaving her long, slim legs so bare and molding around her body so that even from across the room, I could see she couldn't possibly have been wearing a bra. The tightness in my middle gripped tighter, but it wasn't how gorgeous my wife looked. But that ID never seen that dress before, and it certainly wasn't the smart gray skirt suit that Emily had left our house in just a few hours before. My chest went tight, but I told myself I was being silly again, unreasonable. Why wouldn't she change for an evening meeting? Why shouldn't Emily look sexy to impress an important customer? Then she laughed at something he said and smiled at him, our smile, the one that would light up the street outside, the smile that I always imagined she reserved for me. Worse, she reached up to him and put her hand on his chest, playfully, coquettishly, not the sort of gesture a woman would make to a business client, not unless she knew him well, very well indeed. The thought that it could be a friend of her father's flashed through my mind, an old family friend, maybe like an uncle, but I was clutching at straws. When Emily reached up, stretching on her tiptoes to kiss him on the cheek, my world started to go black. A dark rage came over me, only getting worse as he bent down and returned the kiss, but directly on her lips, the two of them holding it for longer than any uncle and niece had a right to. The prick, the scumsucker, the cheating scumsucker. I'd kill him, but I could only stand there and watch as Emily played up even more to him, cuddling up to him as he put his arm affectionately around her, grinning at him as she so often did to me, as he patted her bottom, molding her gorgeous body into his as he squeezed her tightly. I couldn't breathe. I needed air, but I couldn't leave, couldn't pull myself away from the dreadful scene being played out before my eyes. They kissed again, this time with even more feeling, and Emily, my beautiful sweet Emily, seemed blissfully lost in the company of this unknown man. "Can I help you, sir?" I looked around, and there was some uniformed flunky questioning my right to be there, questioning my right to watch my beloved wife make out with some scumsucker stranger. "Go to hell," I shouted far too loudly. It all got out of hand after that, and he called for help, three of them manhandling me out to the back in trance as I watched Emily going off with this stranger, laughing at his no doubt stupid bloody jokes, running her hand up and down his back, and making no objection as he reached down and cupped the cheeks of her bum as if he owned it. I found myself on the floor in a back alley, a few scratches on my face, but no serious harm done. I made my way back to the front and stormed back in, determined to confront her, to find out what was going on, but the security guys caught me again, threw me out on my ear, threatening to be less gentle if I didn't bugger off, unwilling to listen to my pleas that my wife was in there with another man. I slinked off, searching hopelessly up at the windows, wondering which set of curtains they were hidden behind, and the thought of what that scumsucker was doing to my Emily, my dearest Emily, tearing at my soul. What hold did he have over her? Where did the money come into this? Damn it, the money didn't matter anymore. My wife Emily was in there somewhere, being screwed by her lover, and I was powerless to stop it. Again, a flashback after that last date. Things went wonderfully. I felt like a teenager in love again, and it just never seemed to go away. Emily seemed the same, and I met her parents, who seemed overjoyed that at last someone had won her heart. We were married 8 months afterward, the biggest wedding I'd ever been to or ever likely to, all paid for by her wealthy parents, who seemed more interested in making a good show than anything else. I vaguely tried to find out if she had some troubled past experience, why she had apparently still been a virgin in her 30s in this day and age, but she didn't wish to discuss it, promising to tell me all about it one day, and we were so happy, so in love, that it didn't seem to matter anyway. The first 6 months were bliss, unless you worked for me, of course, in which case it seemed that nobody could get much sense out of me. It didn't matter as everyone was happy for me, even my competitors, so touched that they didn't take too much advantage like hell they didn't. It came as a wake-up call when we lost a big account, and I had to put a lot more effort into my business. Not that I neglected Emily, however, but she felt the difference, I suppose, lost a bit of her spirit and acted a bit down. "What's up, Emily, love?" I asked for the 10th time, not really expecting a sensible answer. She looked at me, sighed, and at last told me. "I'm a bit bored," she admitted. "Not with you, not at all. You're wonderful." I smiled back at her, happy to hear her say it, even though our lovemaking had waned considerably over the last few months. "I need something to interest me, keep my brain working. Maybe I could do a bit of work for my old agency." Shed stopped working for them just after our marriage and had seemed happy, but it was true that just lately, there was obviously something missing in her life. "Would they take you back? Have you asked them?" I ventured, thinking it might be a good idea. Emily smiled. It was that smile, and I knew her mind was made up and that I had no argument, even if I thought of one. "They've rung me every month since we were married. They're desperate for me to go back," she sang out. "I've sort of suggested that I might go back and do a bit, just part-time." It was settled. The following week, she went back up to Riverside to see them and started a few days later, doing some afternoon meeting thing for them. She came home that evening full of smiles, happy as Larry. Shed had a great day, and all was well again. The Collins household was back on track. I had nothing to complain about as Emily rediscovered her zest for life and the energy for sex, even more than before, though I wouldn't have thought it possible. Emily had always liked straightforward sex previously, which I put down to her lack of experience, shying nervously away from anything out of the ordinary. But from then on, she became liberated, totally prepared to try anything. It was surprising how naturally good at it all she was, and how much she loved it. I had no idea why I deserved this unrivaled pleasure. I didn't worry about it, and I just enjoyed it. The next 2 years or so were incredible, the earlier problems having disappeared. We spent every possible spare moment together, and I pined when she was out for the evening, even more so when she was away for a whole weekend in Rome, Chicago, or wherever. But her job took her mainly down to Riverside, and whenever I could, I tried to arrange something so that I could meet her down there and have lunch before she disappeared off for the evening to some function or other. Then I found that bank statement, and it all changed. I couldn't believe she was cheating on me, but the evidence was there. I'd seen it. I'd seen her kissing and cuddling up to her boyfriend in the hotel. I'd seen his hand on her ass, his fingers disappearing up under the back of her short dress. There was no doubt in my mind that they had ended up inside it not much later on. The thought of that brought tears of frustrated rage to my eyes. How could she do this? How could she cheat me like this? What was so special about this American guy? What did he have that I didn't? A bigger tool, or what? Damn it. He was 20 years older than me, 30 years older than her. Maybe it was someone she worked with, but he looked well off, so perhaps it was her boss. And I seem to remember her saying that one of the directors was an American. However close a working relationship, bosses aren't allowed those liberties, not unless there's something going on. My mind went in circles till I felt like bursting into tears. Maybe this had been going on for some time. Maybe that's why she wanted to go back to work for them. Maybe, oh damn it, I didn't know what to think. It was a Thursday, the morning after I'd been thrown out of the hotel, and I just couldn't take it anymore. I'd heard Emily's car arrive home in the early hours, and I wondered how many other times she had come home this late when she'd been with him without me knowing when I was fast asleep. It was some time before she came up to bed, and even in the gloom, I could make out that she had changed into her nightgown already, maybe showered in the spare bedroom as well, maybe so that I wouldn't detect the smell of her lover on her. I was livid but determined to hold on till the morning. If I was going to throw her out, then tough on her. But if it was me walking out the door, then the early hours weren't too welcoming. I still prayed that there'd be an explanation and that in the morning she'd laugh about it and tell me about the stupid prick trying to take advantage of her. She snuggled up to my back, but I pretended to be asleep, refusing to be aroused from my slumbers, even though she cuddled up close, wrapped her arms around me, and kissed the back of my neck. I doubted whether we would ever be sleeping together again, never mind making love. It was with some relief to me that she eventually gave up, probably to her as well. She wouldn't have to pretend anymore. The next morning, I was up and dressed long before her, but then I hadn't had such an energetic evening as she had no doubt experienced. "Hi, sweetie," she called out as she breezed into the living room, her loveliness almost making me change my plans. "How are you this morning?" I didn't reply, just sat there impassively, my heart thumping, and she looked around at me, the cup in her hand crashing back to the table as it slipped from her hand. "What on earth happened to you?" she cried. Her concern could almost have been genuine. The 2 bruises that had been added to the cuts on my face the second time I'd been thrown out were obviously a bit of a surprise. Emily made to run to my side, but I held my hand up to stop her. Maybe the look on my face had more to do with it. "What's up, John? What happened?" she demanded urgently. "I got thrown out of a bar last night," I replied tersely. I didn't get the response I expected, but I should have foreseen it. "What? You got thrown out of a bar?" she squealed in her oh-so-English accent. "You stupid man. What did you do? Get drunk or something?" She looked at me and grinned, almost giggled, as she imagined me, the pillar of respectability, getting thrown drunk out of some pub. "Hope it wasn't the bridge, John. We're supposed to be going there tomorrow night." The grin on her face died as she realized I wasn't smiling back. From now on, I would begin to enjoy this little discussion, and in some small way, I would make her suffer for what she had done to me. "What's up, John?" she asked simply. "Sit down," I instructed. "You may need to." I waited a few moments, savoring the tension in her face. She knew something was up, but had no idea what. Now the shoe was on the other foot. It wasn't a pub I was thrown out of. It was a bar, a hotel bar. "Hotel bar? What hotel? One in Mansfield?" she asked, unable to understand where this conversation was going. "Not Mansfield. Riverside. The North End, sort of. Oakland way." I noticed a quiver on her lips, no more than that, but the mention of Oakland shocked her. That's where she had spent the night. "Which hotel?" she asked, but she had already dropped her gaze. I guess she knew what was coming. "The Grand Central," I said calmly. "It's just off the square. Maybe you know it, Emily. Maybe you've been there recently, maybe?" Emily ran her hand across her brow and then looked up, trying to force a smile to her face. She didn't know how much I knew. Christ, I didn't know how much I knew. "Okay, so I was there last night. I was working," she whispered, and then spoke louder, more confidently. "Christ, John, you knew I was going there. I told you so. I always tell you where I am going. What's this all about?" "It's about who you were with," I answered, still calm outwardly, if not inside. She looked straight at me, not sure what to say. "A client. Just a client," Emily said at last, but her voice wavered. "I think she already knew she had lost. And do all your clients get to feel your ass? Do they all treat you as if they own you? Do they all get kissed like they were your lover?" I threw at her, losing my calm completely. Emily looked at me, and her face dissolved. Then she burst into tears. I should have felt triumph, but all I felt was heartbreak, our heartbreak. I still loved her, you see. I resisted the temptation to rush to her, cuddle her, and tell her it was all okay, to not worry about it. It was too late for that. I waited as there was no way that I was going to say the next words. What she said next could just make a difference. After a while, she looked up and, while still sniffing back the tears, said, "I love you, John," then burst out crying again, the grief racking through her whole body. I again waited till she settled down, again waited for her to speak first. "What did you see, John?" she asked timidly. "I'll tell you what I saw, you witch. I saw you smile at him and kiss him. I saw you stroking his back and him fondling your backside, which you didn't seem to object to. I saw the two of you going off arm in arm towards the stairs, with his hand halfway up the back of your dress. That's what I saw. I suppose you were off to his bedroom, am I right?" Emily looked at me sadly, sadder than I could ever remember seeing her. She opened her mouth to deny, but stopped, knowing it was a waste of time. Then she nodded her head just enough to acknowledge my fears to be correct, the look in her eyes one of utter despair. "I suppose you screwed one another, screwed away all night, and then had the damn cheek to come back here smelling of him." "That's not true," she wailed back. "I didn't come back like that. I showered before leaving the hotel. I'd never do that to you, I promise." I wasn't sure what her promises were worth anymore, so I went on. "Then why did you get changed in the other room? Why didn't you undress in our room like you normally would?" "I didn't want to wake you if you were sleeping." "I didn't want to wake you up." Her response was immediate, had the ring of truth, but hardly excused her. "And why was that?" I asked at last. "Because you didn't want me to know how late you were back, maybe?" Emily whispered, almost inaudibly. Maybe, after some moments, and not for the first time. I'll bet. I shot at her, her silence confirming my accusation. What do we do now then, Emily? I asked after another long silence, the only noise her sniffling as she tried to control her emotions. I wasn't enjoying this as much as ID hoped I would. I don't know, John, but I do love you. Only you. You're the only one. Oh yes, Emily, I'm the only one you love, but you make love to some other guy behind my back. That's really convincing. I really believe that. It was just sex. We didn't make love, not love. It was just sex, fun, exciting even, but just sex. And there's a difference. I questioned her. She nodded her head. Yes, there's a difference, a big difference. Please, John, understand, there's a big difference. I was in no mood to understand the difference and was finding it harder to control my anger. This lover of yours, I continued. Who is he? How long has this been going on? He's not my lover, she insisted. I've told you, he's not. It's not what you think, John. Honestly, there's absolutely nothing between us. Please believe me. Shut up, you stupid woman, I interrupted her. Stop making it worse. Stop lying to me. Do you think I'm bloody stupid or something? Tell me now, how long have you been screwing him? Is it weeks or months or maybe years? I only met him last night, said Emily, suddenly calm, though the tears still streamed down her cheeks. I met him at the hotel, probably only 5 or 10 minutes before you spotted us. Oh yes, and am supposed to believe that, am I? I suppose he bought you a glass of wine and got you drunk, took advantage of you, you poor little cow. No, it wasn't like that at all, John, was my beautiful bride's whispered answer. As I said, I was working. He paid me to have sex with him. Emily's story high. I suppose you must all think I'm awful and I can't blame you. It broke John's heart when I told him the guy in the hotel had paid me for sex, that I was a call girl. I tried to tell him I wasn't, that I worked as an escort girl, but who was I kidding? Not even myself anymore. He called me a cheap prostitute, and that really hurt me, made me cry. Somehow, I can't stand the word prostitute, and I just can't think of myself as one. A silly little difference in words, maybe, but it had always allowed me to live with myself. And cheap? Do know, I certainly wasn't cheap, not by any standards. My clients were all very rich, and they had to be to pay me and the commission my agency, Golden Circle, took. Top politicians, sportsmen, captains of industry, as the press called them, all sorts, and from all over the world as well. Like the other girls, I had regulars, once a month maybe, and some of them I'd known for some years, a couple before I even met John, though I prayed to God that he'd never discover that fact. There were British, American, Canadian, French, all sorts, quite an international clientele. Mostly it was when they were visiting Riverside, usually on business, but they often invited me away for the weekend, and before I married John, sometimes a week or more. Golly, that always cost them a packet, several thousands, but I guess I gave them good value. When I was with them, I was their girlfriend, their mistress, loving and attentive. For my clients, I must have been the perfect girlfriend, available on demand by way of a simple telephone call to do more or less anything they wanted, and not there when they didn't need me. I never spoiled it by taking money direct from them either. That went through Golden Circle, and they then paid my cut. But since ID got married, directly into my secret bank account, I never even touched any of that money. I couldn't bring myself to do so, and it had long since been nothing to do with money anyway. That is, except for my so-called monthly salary, which was then transferred to my normal account to cover up what I was up to, and I made a point of letting John see that on a regular basis to make sure he suspected nothing. Then he found that damn statement. The man I loved so completely and desperately found it where I had hidden it overnight, and my world collapsed. I cried for a week, my eyes red with my grief. John had stormed out of the house, and he was crying like a baby. I couldn't believe I could have hurt him so deeply. It was stupid to think I could get away with it forever, and I don't know what I must have been thinking. It had just become my way of life. I'd been doing escorting when I met him, and though ID stopped for over 6 months after we got married, it was like a drug, and I drifted back into it. I could claim I was forced, but that is too easy, and I don't deserve easy anymore. I've lost my right to that. I had no idea where he'd gone, where he was living, and despite my calls, He refused to speak to me or even listen to me. I was desperate, almost suicidal, and though I understood his hurt, I knew he loved me, or at least had, and couldn't understand how he could cut me off so abruptly like that. I cut myself off from everyone and didn't have a friend in the world. I realized how my lifestyle had provided me with so many so-called friends, but none I could confide in, not one single one that I could cry my heart out to. There was one, of course, but he wouldn't speak to me, and who could blame him? I turned down several dates and told them I wasn't well. I must have sounded terrible on the phone, so I guess they believed me, and anyway, I was in no condition to entertain any men. To my shame, even then, I never thought about telling them I was finished with that way of life. I hope it was just because I never thought about it clearly. After about 10 days with no contact, even Lisa at his office politely turning down my request to be put through to him, I decided to go there. By then, ID stopped crying all the time, and my eyes had recovered somewhat, but despite applying my makeup, I still looked a mess. Though I am quite pretty, I know I'm not naturally an outstanding beauty like some girls are, but I've always been able to make the most of my appearance. And ID had the best education that money could buy. I do have a good figure, and I knew how to stand, how to walk, and how to hold myself, as ID been taught by the best in the world at my finishing school in Switzerland. I taught myself how to laugh at men's jokes and how to talk to them on subjects they would be interested in. I knew I had a dazzling smile, but I'd been born with that. I was used to heads turning when I walked into a room, and I adored it, almost came to expect it. But I didn't turn any heads that day, none at all. Christ, Emily, you look terrible, said Lisa when I presented myself at her desk. We had become quite friendly over the last few years, but she was now the epitome of discretion, so my appearance must have really surprised her. Sorry, John is not here. When will he be back? I asked, fighting to hold back another bout of crying. Lisa looked at me pityingly, stood up, and took me gently by the arm. Come on, she said, and do a break. Let's go and get a coffee somewhere. Over coffee, actually. I drank tea. She told me that John had seen my car pulling into the car park and had gone out through the back door as I'd come in through the front. He told her we'd had a big bust-up, but not why, which made me sigh with relief. Do you want to discuss it? She said. He's in a terrible state. Do you want to tell me what it's about? I can't, I replied, but it's my fault, not his. That bad? Lisa commented with a knowing look. Worse than that, I replied. Much worse. I think you need to find someone to talk to about this, she suggested. Someone close to you that you can trust. It was good advice, but I had nobody I was close to. My parents, an only child. But how do you start a conversation like that? I haven't mentioned it before, Daddy, but I've been working as a prostitute since I left university, and my husband's just found out. No, it just wasn't possible. I had nobody, and I'd have to work it out for myself. But it didn't work out that way. The agency kept ringing me, and eventually, I had to admit what had happened, that my husband had found out. Oh dear, they said, but that was about all. The last thing they wanted was to get involved in a marital argument. Then a week later, Michael rang. Michael was another of my American clients, nearly 60 but in really good shape, a good lover, and I'd known him since before I'd met John. We got on really well, and I suppose I did have some quite deep feelings for him, though nothing like I had for John. Anyway, he was married, and once I'd even met his wife, though I was, of course, introduced as a junior business contact. Michael was one of only 2 of my dates that I had ever given my telephone number to. I felt I could trust him. Sorry, Michael, I said when I heard his voice. Am not available at the moment, might not be for some time. Golden Circle told me your bad news, he said back to me over the phone, and I burst into tears. You need someone to talk to, don't you? Michael went on. Let's meet somewhere. Maybe I can help. Oh, Michael, please, no. Don't ask me out. I'm in no state to give you what you want. Payback time, he said quietly. Tom, I did something for you rather than the other way round. No messing around, I promise. Meet me at the usual place. No, not there. It'll come up to Mansfield. Where do you suggest? 5 hours later, I was seated in front of Michael, and he started to question me. Do you want him to come back? He asked first, to which I replied that of course I did. But there seemed to be little chance. If not, then I would be more than happy to. Well, You know that Jane and I haven't been getting on so well for some time now, and I thought. I interrupted him. Please, Michael, don't lead me down that path. I like you, okay. I love you in some way, but you're not John. Sorry, but you're just not John. Michael nodded his head sadly. I expected that, Emily. Sorry, but I had to ask, had to get it out of the way. I smiled at him. He was so sweet. John won't talk to me, Michael. He just won't talk to me. I don't know what to do. I don't understand how, if he loved me, he could cut me off like that. And I don't think you've yet realized quite how much you have destroyed him. His whole world, young lady, Michael replied. But he just doesn't understand. It was just sex, just something I need, the excitement. It's like a drug, and I don't seem to be able to exist without it. Going with a range of different men all the time, not knowing who I'd be going to bed with from one week to another. I can't seem to explain it to anyone. I poured my feelings out, explaining how even when I'd stopped after getting married, I'd ended up miserable after just 6 months or so with only one lover, wonderful though he was. And as much as I was in love with him, just sex was it. Was it just sex with me, Emily? Michael asked gently. Yes, there was never anything else, just sex. The way you smiled at me, the way you kissed me, the way you pleased me, just sex all the time. Was it? Michael asked. He wasn't asking, he was querying whether I'd got my feelings right. I thought about it, remembered what it was like being with him, remembered the feelings with which we had made love. Yes, made love, not had sex. I was kidding myself. And though it had so often been just sex with most of them, an adventure to take part in and forget, with Michael and a few others, for that matter, it had been more than that, far more. Do you remember how you reacted when you found out I'd gone with one of the other girls when you were on holiday, Emily? Michael demanded gently, reminding me of how angry I had been, how I had shouted and screamed at him, sulked for a couple of weeks, even been sharp with poor John, who was so blameless. Can you imagine how John must feel now? Can you imagine how much worse it must be for him? I looked up at Michael, and it came flooding in the realization of quite what I'd done to John, quite how unspeakably awful I had been. I started crying, but this time I wasn't crying for myself. I was crying for him, my husband, my love. And I cried like I'd never cried in my life before. I was heartbroken that I'd broken his heart. Michael took me gently in his arms and rocked me tenderly whilst I cried like a baby. As he held me, I can't imagine what I can do, but I'll try, he whispered to me. I just hope he thinks as much of you as I do. I would do anything, absolutely anything, to have just a glimmer of a chance to win John back. I'd fight against my need to go with other men, and I prayed to God that I could be strong enough to resist it, to have the willpower to say no. I'm not going to do that anymore, and I'd start straight away. Yes, I would. Straight away. I'd tell Michael to stop undoing the buttons of my blouse. I will. I'm determined. I will. I'll tell him to stop immediately. Right now. I mean it. Right now. Right now. I'll tell him to stop. I did it because I love John. I stood up and went back home. I was still in my thoughts and feeling the pain. I desperately wanted to meet John. I tried, but I never found him. I tried to call, but his phone was off. 3 days later, I was at my mother's place. A man dressed in a suit came over and knocked on the door. I opened it, and the man asked if I was Mrs. Emily. I nodded. You have been served, he said. He handed me the manila envelope and walked away. It was what I was dreading. I knew I lost John forever. It took 8 months. I fought the divorce, but he never gave in. Finally, the judge granted what John wanted. He never spoke to me. I tried to contact him many times after the divorce, but he never responded. I never married or dated again. As for John, I heard that he moved to a different state and is currently engaged to a schoolteacher. Well, life goes on. Unfortunately for me, it moved to a dark world. Thanks for watching. What would you do if you discovered your partner was living a double life? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories. Stay true to yourself.